it's time for the third and final race of the weekend in round 6 of the 2024 Euroformula Open Championship from the Red Bull Ring. This 4.318 kilometre circuit has provided us with plenty of thrills and a couple of spills in the two races so far this weekend. But the circuit is rather unrecognisable compared to the conditions that we've seen in the two races so far. Look at that, the sun is out. The temperature into the double digits for the first time this weekend, and we're going to actually have some slick tyre running and might actually get the full race distance in for the first time this weekend as we get set for another 20-lap encounter around this Styrian circuit. First of all, let's look back at the highlights from the first two races of the weekend. Jose Garfias started on pole position for his first race in the Euroformula Open Championship, but a poor getaway and contact at the first corner, getting pinched between two cars, meant that his race didn't go any further than the first corner. Francesco Simonazzi diced for second place with some of our debutantes. Ed Pearson was the very much the entertaining driver in that first race, but it was Brad Benavides taking a dominant victory in the first race of the weekend by 15 seconds. Second race this morning got underway under safety car conditions, and Fernando Barrichello from reverse grid pole came under immediate pressure from Michael Shin. The pair diced through the first few corners. It was Shin with the great exit out of the first corner, but a mistake from Shin later in the race allowed Barrichello into the lead, where he did not look back. The Brazilian on course for his first victory in the Euroformula Open Championship, and he did so with style, with Shin and Simonazzi completing the podium. But it was an emotional day for Barrichello as he took his first win. This is how the championship looks going into the final race of the weekend. Brad Benavides 100 points clear of Francesco Simonazzi and Levente Revesh in third, with Fernando Barrichello's win moving him up to 5th in the standings ahead of Michael Shin. One more race to determine the outcome. So race 3 about to get underway. The formation lap is already underway. Here is how they line up. Michael Shin on reverse grid pole in his final Euroformula Open race of the season. Fernando Barrichello in second ahead of Francesco Simonazzi, and the debutant Ed Pearson starting from 4th position. Then we have Brad Benavides, our race 1 winner, with Jose Garfias, our original pole sitter, with Levente Revesh at the back of the field in 7th place, completing up the field. We have lost Paolo Brajnik, sadly, from the grid. You can see the sun starting to get lower in the sky. It's glinting off of these cars. Chris Stevens and George Morgan in the commentary box for this final race of the weekend. George, this could be a big race for Michael Shin. We anticipate this to be his last race of the season.
It could be, and it's been a day of history in many ways. Obviously, first and foremost, congratulations to Fernando Barrichello. It's been 15 races in the making. He made it win, though, number 1 on the 16th time of trying. But on top of that, we can talk a little bit about Brad Benavides, with win number 7 going his way, making it 7th heaven this season. He now surpasses Victor Baptista, the 2015 champion who had 6 wins back then on the road to winning the crown. He now ties with Leonardo Polcini, Cameron Dass and Noel Leon as a driver that has managed to amass 7 wins in pursuit of a championship. So not a bad group of drivers to be associated with, but there's definitely more in the offing. Great opportunity here for Michael Shin. Barrichello also starting on the front row. Can he do it in the dry like he did it in the wet?
Well, Shin and Barrichello had a fantastic duel on the first lap in very wet conditions this morning. It's the same 2 drivers on the front row of the grid, this time around in the opposite order. We have the green flag waved at the back of the grid. All 5 lights are on, and for the final time this weekend, we are racing at the Red Bull Ring. A very good launch for our pole sitter, Michael Shin, and it was Ed Pearson getting a very good start from 4th position, but he locks up going into the first corner, does the young Brit, and has to skate off to the escape road, so he'll drop a couple of places probably. Look at the lead that Michael Shin's been able to pull in one corner as Francesco Simonazzi looks to mount a challenge on our race 2 winner, Fernando Barrichello, to the outside in his BVM racing machine. Brad Benavides waiting in the wings as well. Look up from Simonazzi, though. He runs out wide. Benavides that might be the car that goes through into second place, because Barrichello was all over the escape road on the way out of turn 3 as well, and it's our championship leader who's had the clean run into second place.
Yeah, he's had a great run as well. Barrichello, though, looking to fight back. We're going to go 3 wide in towards turn 4. Barrichello going late on the brakes, and that's a fantastic move from Barrichello. Can he hold it? No! Into the gravel. It looks so stylish, just could not quite finish it, and he's lost another 2 places as a consequence. Here comes Simonazzi again, coming through the Rochenwerth curves, but it's Now, at this stage, Brad Benavides up into second place, but he's got a little bit of work to do to try and track down Michael Shin, who, in all the fracas, has speared away. He's gone.
1.5 seconds clear. I mean, that was bold and brave from Barrichello. Just didn't quite work out with dipping 2 wheels onto the gravel and dropping a whole load of places. He's now only got Levente Revesh behind him. And so at the end of the first lap, Michael Shin will come across the line to tick off the first of 20 laps ahead of Brad Benavides by about 1.4 seconds. As Barrichello looks to defend from Revesh, but behind him, Francesco Simonazzi, then Ed Pearson, then Garfias, Barrichello and Revesh side by side into turn 1. And Barrichello is going to have the same move done to him that Shin put on him in race 1. But with a little bit less momentum for the Hungarian. So they ride side by side up towards the braking zone of turn number 3. It's Revesh with the inside line in the red wing-tipped motorpark car. And again, Barrichello runs out wide onto turn 3, not getting it right on the brakes once again.
Yeah, having a bit of an issue heading through towards turn 3. We've got some movements there further back as well. Simonazzi still pursuing after Brad Benavides, but Pearson and Garfias, the 2 newcomers to the championship, now started to fight it out. But at this stage, it is going to be Garfias with the upper hand, but the switchback here on offer for Edward Pearson. Obviously, great to have him here in this series. He's been raving about this car like Garfias has. Gets right on the curves as well before heading through towards Roche and Verth curve, but no stopping the 99, who now holds on to 4th place. And now Revesh is ahead of Barrichello as well, confirmed on our timing screen. Revesh, though, with a lot to do, should he want to gain on the back of P5's Edward Pearson.
Right, these 2 debutants have been so impressive. Jose Garcia sticking it on pole position yesterday at the first time of asking. Ed Pearson finishing 2nd in his first race yesterday in very treacherous conditions. And we know that Pearson is going to be joining us for the remaining rounds in Barcelona and Monza. I believe Jose Garfias is also sticking around with us.
So.
Yeah, we head back up out of turn 1, back up the hill and towards turn 3. And Benavides isn't exactly hauling in our race leader, but he is eroding that gap. He did the fastest lap of the race last time around, a 1:25.362, and has brought the gap down to about a second now. So actually it took another 2/10 out of him just in the first sector there.
Yeah, Brad Benavides with the fastest first sector, 22.089. Line looking to close down on Michael Shin. The gap down to a second, and it's coming down all the time. Just look at how much he's catching up. Michael Shin now, who would love to certainly bring an end to his championship run with a victory here at Red Bull Ring. It would certainly mean a lot. He had a chance earlier on in the weekend, though it would be Brad Benavides who would lift certainly the trophy on the top step of the podium for a 7th time, enlisting a 15th podium in that exchange as well, alike as they now come through the slight semi-chicane on the run down towards Rint Corner. There's Shin, followed by Benavides. Simonazzi in 3rd place, and if he stays like this, that'll be his 2nd at 3rd place of the race weekend. Managed to keep Levente Revesh in behind for a 2nd time running, though Pearson was closing him down as well. It's been a great weekend for Pearson, who has already vocally said how much he really enjoys the Dallara 320 chassis, and we did hear in an interview as well with Jose Garfias on taking pole. Simonazzi whipping that tail out once again, as he often does. And now we'll take the run up through towards turn 3, but he has got company because Garfias is getting closer.
Yeah, we're going to see that moment again. He sort of arrived a little bit out of control, and that sausage curb on the left-hand side there, rather helping to arrest the slide that Simonazzi was trying to correct. Benavides taking another 0.4 of a second or so out of race leader Michael Shin. The gap down to 3/4 of a second. And as you mentioned there, George, it's only half a second between Simonazzi and Garfias for the last spot on the podium. So Garfias, it's been a very disappointing weekend after what was so much potential in qualifying for the Mexican driver, considering he didn't get any further than turn 1 on Saturday. And this morning, the race conditions, well, that was Garfias just dipping 2 wheels into the gravel out of turn 6 there. And I was saying he might still rescue a podium finish from his debut weekend in the Euroformula Open Championship after 2 slightly disappointing races, but we know this kid's got the potential.
Yeah, and obviously this is the first time these drivers have actually, been out on this track in these conditions. Of course, we've had the wet weather prior, so maybe Garfias just testing the limits a little bit of what this car can do in full dry, sunny conditions as they now come up through towards turn 1. Brad Benavides getting closer. He's within a second as they now make the climb up the hill. If he gets in the wheel tracks and in the slipstream, it may provide an opportunity out of turn 3 and towards turn 4. They'll take the run up. Simonazzi still down in third, still being pursued by Garfias despite dipping into the gravel. It has not stopped or quelled the momentum that he has carried as we now reach the top, the very top of the circuit, the precipice, and then decline or descend downhill before then reaching turn 4 at Slosh Gold. Still Shin with Benavides urging closer, still 6/10 between them, but Simonazzi forfeiting time ever so slightly. Garfias a lot closer out of turn 3 than he has been throughout the entirety of this race and getting closer through turn 4.
Yeah, it's looking very tight now for third. I was going to say Michael Shin returned the serve of Benavides' pace last time around, but the Floridian is very quick in the first sector, as you would anticipate, because he's getting the toe from Shin all the way up the hill. And again, well, this time it was Simonazzi dipping 2 wheels into the gravel out of turn 6. And so that has leveled out the gap once again and sort of recovered the time that Garfias lost on the previous tour. And it's looking very close again. They are maintaining that gap to Ed Pearson behind. It's hovering at around 1.5 seconds. And so once again, the Mexican chasing Francesco Simonazzi, multiple race winner from this season. Brad Benavides is closest challenger for this season. You see the number 99 car that used to be in the hands of Noel Leon and Alex Garcia. Riding back up the hill. And wow, Shin really returned the serve last time around. And that was not a great lap for Benavides because he lost half a second to our race leader in the end. And so the gap back up to 1.2. Bit more comfortable for Shin now. Now is Simonazzi comfortable on the run out of turn 3?
Well, it's looking like the gap is starting to shrink ever so slightly. Garfias was better on that last lap by just over 1/10 of a second. So 25.459 for Jose Garfias against Francesco Simonazzi's 25.572. Remember, Simonazzi got it slightly wrong coming through Roche and Verth curve, just dipping into the gravel in sector 2. Once more committing over the curbs to try and maximize the entrance and exit speed as they now head through in towards this next left and then in towards the next right. Of course, he's trying to put the foot down because he's aware of Garfias' pace. We know what he can do over 1 lap. Remember, he was half a second quicker than anybody else in qualifying.
Garfias joining us from the Euro Cup 3 Championship, his first weekend here in the Euroformula Open Championship, and has been very impressive in terms of his 1 lap speed. But this is the first time we've seen his dry pace in a race condition. It's been very tight between him and Ed Pearson as the 2 debutants. Pearson joining from the GB3 Championship. But Simonazzi again straddling that curb out of turn 1. It's not really doing his momentum any favours. But again, you know, the lap time's starting to come down because they're back into the 25s as they were a few laps ago. Very even Stevens between the top 2, gap up to 1.4 now. But it's even closing up between Simonazzi and Garfias. And Benavides, I should say, because Simonazzi was the fastest of the top 3 last time around. Now, is this a moment here for Jose Garfias? He's closer than he has been at any point so far in this race. Did have a little look up the inside to try and distract Simonazzi in his mirrors, but Simonazzi's a wily old fox.
Yeah, he certainly is. He had to rip off one of the visor tear-offs on his helmet, did Simonazzi, but perhaps collecting some dust in the gravel might have impaired his vision ever so slightly. Obviously, it's imperative that these drivers can see absolutely everything around this circuit. It is so fast-paced and so short, so a lap or a race can be won and lost around any corner. And the threshold between victory and defeat is very fine indeed. As they now come out of Rint Corner, turn 10 now is up next. They'll come across the line to continue onwards with what will very shortly be, and as it is, 13 laps still to go here at the Red Bull Ring. 2 rounds to go after this one. The grand finale beckons. Brad Benavides with more points in his locker should he finish second, but a victory to go 2 out of 3 here this weekend would be special, no less. Has only appeared outside of the podium twice, one of those occasions being in our earlier race, race 2. It did not work out for him. Obviously went the way of Fernando Barrichello. As now we see once again Jose Garfias getting very tight to the back of Simonazzi, rushing out of turn 3. They'll dip down towards turn 4 again. And then we can now see Michael Shin still clear.
And in that race too, it was Shin and Seminatsi occupying the other podium places, and they're of course both running in the top 3 at the moment. We alluded earlier, this is, we believe, Michael Shin's final race in the Euroformula Open Championship. Why? It's a part-time campaign he's doing, because he's also competing in Euro Cup 3, which clashes with our final round at Monza, and also he's not allowed to race in Barcelona because Euro Cup are going to be racing there in a few weeks' time as well, and there are certain series have particular rules about you doing laps at circuits you're about to race on in your main championship, so to speak. So he's technically not really allowed to race with us in Barcelona, and right now he is on course for a victory, but of course we've still got 12 laps to go.
Fastest lap.
And fastest lap of the race. Oh, it's just been beaten by Simonazzi, actually. So 1:24.7, pace coming back down again. So we're back into the 24s, but still Shin was able to stretch his advantage a little bit further. It's now 1.7 seconds over our championship leader. And I think if Brad Benavides is probably a smart guy and knows that Michael isn't going to be around for the next 2 races, and so he just needs to kind of bring home the points in second place. He's got a 100-point advantage over Francesco Simonazzi. He doesn't need to risk his car getting into a scrap with somebody who's not going to be doing the last 2 rounds.
And if it stays like this, if the status quo maintains, it means that 100 points gap will indeed lengthen further. So it doesn't really matter too much as long as Simonazzi remains behind. But at this stage, it's looking very, I would say, well, it looks vastly illustrated that Brad Benavides is on the road to clinching this Euroformula Open Championship that he, of course, entered back in 2018 as well, on the road to Formula 3 and Formula 2. Let's take a look here at Benavides coming over the curbs as well, committing out of turn 1 and sending it up the hill towards turn 3. He's had a stellar season and looking to close it out in style after a long summer break through the August period. But Simonazzi still relentlessly trying to close, because he is still very much in this title race. We still have 6 races after this to bring you. Because the next one only a couple of weeks away as we venture in towards turn 1. And again, over the curbs as now Simonazzi once again commits. That last lap once more was fastest indeed for Simonazzi, 1:24.687 to top the one he'd already had prior. So, you know, Benavides can't rest on his laurels here. The Italian stallion is cantering.
And the gap between Benavides and Simonazzi is under 1 second for the first time in this race. And so the Italian is creeping up to our championship leader. Quite if he'll have the pace to do anything about it when he gets there, well, that remains to be seen. And could also open up the door for Jose Garfias. They're pulling well clear now of Ed Pearson and Levente Revesh. The 3.8 seconds now between our 2 debutants in 4th and 5th. Revesh a further 2 seconds back from Pearson. So the Hungarian not really showing the form that he had in race 2 earlier. He was a bit more dicey. Barrichello running in at 7th position at the back of the field. Let's see what the gaps are when they get back across the timing line. Once again, flying through these last 2 corners at the Rindt curve, and then the final compression point at turn number 10, as the 20-year-old South Korean makes his way up towards the timing line. Half race distance now covered for Michael Shin from reverse grid pole. The race 3 grid set from the qualifying order reversed, as opposed to our race 2 grid, which is the race 1 result reversed. Heading back up the hill towards turn 3. Of course, we talk about Garfias and Pearson as potential candidates for next year's championship, where we will be introducing the Dallara 324 chassis with the Tom's prepared Toyota engine, smaller with fewer cylinders, but turbocharged and more power. And we expect to be around 2 seconds faster than the current car, which is no slouch either. It's very nippy and quicker than some of the counterpart championship cars on offer. And the kits available for next year are also looking very good. They've been told 10 update kits have already been committed, because you can take the existing 320 chassis and get an upgrade kit to a 324. So they're expected to be delivered in December. Garfias just pushing the limits out of turn 7, but yeah, also 6 new 324 expected to be made available at the start of next year as well, and plenty of teams sniffing around and looking at that. because there are, potential for 22 cars on offer next year.
Yeah, absolutely right. Grid could be bigger than ever next season. Keep your eyes peeled, folks. It's going to be hellacious. Simonazzi opening up the throttle again, heading out of turn one, trying to get close to the back of Benavides, and is actually lurching closer. Last lap, though, did go in Benavides' favour by near enough 3/4 of a tenth. Minute gaps, I know, but they can make all the difference in terms of battling for higher-end podium positions. But going back to the chassis, obviously we've crowned many great drivers where it comes to pushing them through their careers through Formula 3 and Formula 2 as well. Of course, in recent times, witnessing Oliver Goethe winning the title back in 2022 ahead of the likes of Christian Mansell and Vladislav Lomko, who was incidentally racing in the International GT Open here at the Red Bull Ring this weekend. And obviously on from that, Noel Leon as well, also going on to Formula 3 duty. And even further down, obviously, if you can remember, years gone by, Yuki Tsunoda, who is now on the Formula 1 grid. And, of course, Felipe Drugovich, who went up to Aston Martin. And Jack Doohan, who is another one we can talk about, who's just recently signed to the Alpine team for next season.
Yes, joins Yuki Tsunoda and Carlos Sainz as Euroformula alumni who will be on the 2025 Formula 1 grid. Congratulations, Jack Doohan. It's going to be a very interesting campaign for the Australian, I'm sure, but nice to see Alpine promoting from within, as indeed a number of teams are for next year. And
Absolutely.
it puts a lot of faith into the junior academies in Formula 1 at the moment, and we've seen plenty of talent rise through the ranks here. 2-second time penalty being dished out to Levente Revesh in 6th position for abusing track limits. And we might get an example here of what those track limits are. See, that's fine. It's the yellow curve that determines it, actually. And actually, they were all legal there. But if you dip your left-hand wheels onto the other side of that curb at turn 1, that is considered track limits. And, of course, they're also being very closely monitored at turns 9 and 10, where the white line is considered the track limits. But Revesh has gone over it too many times, so he's been given a 2-second time penalty.
Shin. Michael Shin went wide off, coming through Rochenwerth curve, dipping the toes into the gravel. Obviously, like we said, these drivers testing the limits. And I know, for example, speaking of turns 9 and 10, they have been a cause for issue as far as the stewards are concerned. I remember going back last year, the track limit excursions, there were multiple A4 pages of sheet. Oh, 2-second penalty for car 11. No, that's Levente Revesh, so there you go. This is an example. This is what happened to Michael Shin coming through the middle sector, coming out of Rochenwerth curves, licking up the gravel, maybe sprinkling a little bit onto the track. You can just see it as well in the background. We have had this.
He's still pushing so much.
He is.
You see him sliding out of turn 1.
And he's not the only one, because Simonazzi still pursuing after Brad Benavides. Benavides, though, staying within a second, at least for now. But it's important to note that we have had a prior series with the Pirelli tyres running just before this particular race. So therefore, we have had this rubber layered into the circuit. So there is going to be some good grip out there. But just look at this again. Simonazzi, he's been watching Francesco drive.
Full oppo on there, full opposite lot. That was less smooth. That was a bit of a bumpy ride over the curb, and indeed a track limits infringement there as well. But yeah, it's 1.5 seconds now that covers the top 3. This is really closed up. Remember, that lead gap was up to about 1.7 seconds earlier, but Benavides has regained his composure. Pace for now it's Simonazzi going through the ground. They're all really pushing their luck out of turn 6.
What's interesting is we didn't see too much of that during the wet weather race that we had earlier on, which is quite bizarre. But we're now here in dry conditions, and they seem happy to go skating off into the gravel.
It was turn 9, really, where it was out here where they were getting onto the rumble strips, that painted curbing out there, and really sliding the cars and getting really leery. And yeah, now in the dry, it's turn 6. They're pushing their luck out, which is quite a fast corner, especially in one of these cars, very light, nimble, and agile, and always handy to have a single-seater that weighs under 600 kilos with the driver in it. That means you can throw it around quite a bit like a rag doll, as Benavides continues to close in. Simonazzi did drop back a little bit, half a second he lost to Benavides on the previous lap, partly as a result of that off-track excursion. There was a squeal of Pirelli rubber against the asphalt going into turn 3, which might have been Benavides, it might have been Simonazzi, didn't quite see on that one, it was just out of shot. We said it was closing up between the top three. They're now starting to dispatch of Simonazzi somewhat.
Starting to close up between the top two once again, and Benavides is starting to turn the screw this time on Michael Shin. The gap was closing to a second between them, but now Benavides has been going to work and was indeed faster over the last lap with his 1:25.542. And I must say, looking at the sector times now, once again, he's faster than Michael Shin on this lap as well, as they now head down through towards Rink Corner once more. Of course, at the close of this one, we will have 5 laps remaining here in race 3 at Red Bull Ring in Austria. Spielberg has been alive and kicking with this Dallara 320 chassis. Been here now ever since 2011. The GT Sport organisation has hosted races around this circuit, and off and on hasn't obviously appeared, but back with a bang in recent times, and it's never failed to impress. Once more, they rise up the hill through towards turn 3. Benavides putting on the squeeze here to Michael Shin, just trying to apply the pressure. Of course, if Michael Shin does take the victory here this time, they'll add it to what has already been a reasonable season for him, with a victory, his first victory being at Hockenheim in race 3 as well.
0.02 of a second between the top two in terms of lap time last time around in Michael Shin's favour. I'm sure we'll have felt that from inside the car. But on this lap, Benavides started to put the hammer down. Pulled in about 10th or so on Shin in the first sector, so gap down to 3/4 of a second. Shin's soaking up this pressure really nicely. I mean, so he said to me before the start of the race, there's no pressure on me to win this one from pole. I'm just going to go out there and enjoy it. I've had a fabulous time working with the Motor Park team, which is the response we get from almost every driver. Really,
they do a great job with young talents.
They do know how to get the best out of young drivers, don't they? And we said it time and time again last year watching Noel Leon fight for the title, as we just saw Simonazzi pushing the limits of the...
Well, we remember where Noel Leon was when he was battling against the likes of Tim Tramnitz and Enzo Trulli back at Portimao at the start of the season. Where he was back then, he became a better driver into the back half of the season. And obviously we speak to Kai, the engineer over at Motor Park. He of course was paramount in Noel's development, and actually went ahead and said that, you know, Noel was one of the top talents they had that rose through and increased his raw talent and ability through the work of the team and their efforts in pursuing great race results. And it showed in Formula 3 as well. And much like it has with Ollie Goethe, who has since now gone on to race in F2, competed in today, unfortunately, a retirement after the huge crash they had right at the very start of the race at Baku. But we're glad to report that Ollie is okay, and we wish him all the very best.
I mean, you only need to look at, was it Imola in Formula 3 this year? We had all Euroformula graduates on the podium.
Well, he also won the sprint at Silverstone going back last year. So, you know, he's a proven quantity, is Ollie Goethe.
Absolutely. And of course, a lot of sports car stars in development here. Some drivers saying, I don't want to pursue the single-seater route.
Vlad Lomko.
Exactly, Vlad Lomko, racing here this weekend in the International GT Open as a stand-in for Jim Pla, but of course making a name for himself in LMP2 competition now. And in fact, Francesco Simonazzi just came off the back of his LMP3 debut in the European Endurance Prototype Cup last weekend in Mugello, and potentially exploring that as an option for the future. There are plenty of opportunities in the world of sports car racing, as well as...
Well, we look at Alejandro Garcia as well, who actually became European Le Mans champion with Marcos Seibert. Of course, two of them great friends, and Seibert at the same time was doing a GT Open campaign with Diego Menchaca that same season. And of course, they were a bit unlucky for Menchaca not winning that championship.
I think Shin starting to struggle out of turn 1 because keeps pumping in these good laps, but then Benavides just takes a bit of a chunk out of him in the first sector. It was about a quarter of a second, sorry, that Benavides took out of Shin this time around in the first sector. And as you can see, the Floridian is now going to be quite significantly larger in the mirrors of Michael Shin. The gap down to 0.6 of a second when they went through the timing loop. There's another one here, so we'll see what it is. Now under half a second between Shin and Benavides. So this is brewing up very nicely with 2 laps remaining when they go across the stripe for Shin and Benavides to battle it out for the win here. It'll be Michael Shin going for his second victory of the season and rounding out his Euroformula Open campaign here this weekend. Or is it going to be Brad Benavides for an 8th time this season and a 2nd time this weekend? 2 to go.
Yeah, penultimate lap of the race. They now fly through turn 1. Michael Shin once again climbs the hill towards turn 3. Brad Benavides, though, closer now more than ever. Just within 0.6 of a second and looking to get closer as well. If he goes slightly later on the brakes, it might yet give him a nice run as well if he can carry the speed out of turn 3. Obviously, might choose to leave it until the very last lap to challenge Shin, the South Korean, who has been in strong form so far this race. But back comes Benavides, and he's getting closer and closer all the time. They'll venture in towards turn 4. This is going to tee up an absolutely fascinating final lap. We'll have to see whether Brad Benavides will go for it or whether he will indeed forego it to Michael Shin here in this final race of the weekend.
He is dragging Simonazzi with him as well. 1.3 seconds covers the top 3 with a lap and a half remaining. And Benavides drops a little bit of ground here in the middle sector. Look at that. He lost 0.3 of a second to Shin just in that middle sector. So
Shin was dialed in through that middle sector.
That's brought it up to round about 0.75 of a second again. 1 lap to go for Michael Shin, and as long as he keeps it on the straight and narrow, should be on course for his 2nd victory of the season. As the sun is glinting now at the Red Bull Ring, it is the last lap of the weekend here in the Euroformula Open Championship. Just 4.318 kilometers to go for Michael Shin. It's approaching 10 to 6 in the evening. We're going to be having curfews imposed pretty quickly. And so this will be the last lap of racing as Michael Shin heads back up towards turn 3. And again, you see Benavides does manage to close up the gap in this first sector. And now it's looking about as close as it was before. Francesco Simonazzi with a 2-second time penalty for track limits. That shouldn't impact him too much because he's 3.4 clear of Jose Garfias. Really did manage to put some distance between himself and the Mexican in the second half of this race. Remember, they were battling earlier, but Benavides has caught back up again. He took 0.3 of a second out of Shin in the first sector, so all that time he lost on the previous lap, he's gained it back again. Now, can he stick with Shin now in the middle sector? That is the question. No, the 20-year-old South Korean is absolutely flying through turn 6 and 7 here, and surely with only a couple of braking zones left to go, this is going to be Michael Shin's race to lose now as he heads up the crest of the hill. 2 more corners to go for Michael Shin. He leads Brad Benavides through the Rindt curve and around the final corner for one last time. And Michael Shin will round out his Euroformula Open campaign with victory in race 3 at the Red Bull Ring. He beats Brad Benavides to the line by half a second in the end. And Francesco Simonazzi completes the podium. He does hang on to it as he was 3 seconds clear of Jose Garfias in the end, who completes his his debut weekend with 4th position, followed by Ed Pearson. Levente Revesh loses out to Fernando Barrichello in the end as a result of his 2-second time penalty. So Barrichello 6th, Revesh in 7th.
Michael Shin opened up his Euroformula account back in Hockenheimring in his first round with a victory in race 3. Well, he's come back to race 3 here at Red Bull Ring, closes his season with a win.
Bookending the season very nicely for our part-time campaigner Michael Shin, who beats Brad Benavides by half a second to victory. Francesco Simonazzi picks up a 2nd podium finish of the weekend. Jose Garfias and Ed Pearson round out their debut weekends in the Euroformula Open Championship with strong results there. But it does mean that Brad Benavides extends his championship lead by 4 points, 104 points now ahead of the Italian, with Michael Shin, our race winner, sitting in 6th position there. Closed in on Fernando Barrichello in the end. Still Revesh and Bergmeister running well in 3rd and 4th as well. Garfias and Pearson, of course, opening up their accounts in terms of the points tallies. But this is a very nice way for Michael Shin to round out his campaign. He said, I'm just going to go out there and enjoy it. No pressure to win it, but he has managed to do so. And it couldn't be happening to a nicer lad, to be honest.
No, not at all. Like I said, coming in and taking victory at Hockenheim in race 3, I mean, that is where it pretty much started for him. Followed it up with a couple of podiums at Spa as well. He took a pole position at Hungaroring, and during the course of the same round would take a podium in the opening race of the weekend at Hungaroring as well alike. Obviously wasn't with us at Paul Ricard, but has decided to apply a swan song to his run in this series this season with a victory here in race 3 after a podium earlier on. Not a bad way to end the campaign, and will be bringing his car into Parc Ferme, lining up behind the P1 marker. There he is, the Korean, cruising through, and will park up. I'm sure the celebrations will be in full swing. Brad Benavides shaking his hand as well. True sportsman.
The first man to congratulate him, getting straight in there. This should be a popular one with the Motor Park boys. Michael Shin bowing to his team.
Just like that.
Fantastic.
Michael Shin, race winner once more in the Euroformula Open Championship.
Francesco Simonazzi just behind him there. Another podium finish for him, his second of the weekend. Rounding up quite the tally now is Simonazzi in terms of his podiums in 2024. But, good day for Benavides, good weekend for Benavides, really. He's extended his championship lead further, but now Michael Shin can celebrate with the team.
Well done. Well done, good job. You missed the SD card. Let's take the weight. Okay.
Oh, no, don't celebrate. Got to go and get the weight.
Yeah, Pablo pulling him away.
Procedure's always got to get in the way, doesn't it? Well, the top 3 in race 3 in round 6 of the Euroformula Open Championship. Francesco Simonazzi for BVM Racing collects the second podium of the weekend. Brad Benavides extends his championship lead with a second place finish, following up from his win yesterday. But Michael Shin rounds out his Euroformula Open campaign with a second victory of the season.
Michael Shin, winner of race 3 at the Red Bull Ring in the dry, which is the big news of the weekend, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'm so happy to have had a dry race in such a weekend with tricky conditions. It wasn't easy because the tires were falling off at the end, but I think it was overall a very well-managed race.
It's your second success in the Euroformula, so you must be happy.
Yeah, I'm so happy about it because this is going to be my final race in Euroformula this year, and to round it off with a win is, I think it's the best way to go.
Yeah. You enjoyed the experience.
Thank you so much. Yes, I did.
All the best.
Well, let's take a look back at how Michael Shin managed to do it. He was starting on reverse grid pole. There was plenty of squabbling going on towards the first corner. Barrichello didn't get the best of starts, and it was Simonazzi challenging down the outside with Ed Pearson locking up his brakes and going wide at the first time of asking through turn 1. But the Brits did manage to just about hold on. We went 3 wide into turn 1. Barrichello running off, Simonazzi locking up, and it was Benavides who got the clean run into second position. Barrichello attempted to take the place back, chopping the nose of Simonazzi, not quite getting it stopped in time, dipping 2 wheels into the gravel and falling down to the rear of the field. Not how he would have wanted to follow up his race 2 victory earlier on. Our 2 debutants, Jose Garfias and Ed Pearson, went wheel to wheel once again, as they did this morning. We saw plenty of twitches from the drivers, but Michael Shin fended off Brad Benavides for his second victory of the season, closing out his final weekend in the Euroformula Open Championship with a bang. He will celebrate with the Motor Park team before continuing on with his Euro Cup 3 campaign. But before that, of course, we head to the podium.
Yeah, there they are, just behind the scenes, getting set to walk out. Simonazzi making contact with the camera. 5-second penalty for that.
There's going to be a steward's investigation for that one, isn't there?
Yeah, that's expensive technology you're playing with, Seth. But yeah, as much as we love the Italian stallion, we also love our hardware as well, so please don't break it. As we now want to make their way up onto the podium, Shin on top, Benavides second, Simonazzi in third.
10th time on the podium for Francesco Simonazzi in 2024. And what is it now, 15 for Brad? But for now, for Michael Shin, it's the South Korean national anthem. Well, congratulations to Michael Shin, who has had a great time in the Euroformula Open Championship by the sounds of it, as Francesco Simonazzi collects his 10th podium trophy of the season. Doesn't look best pleased with himself, does he? But I'm sure he knew that more was potentially on the table today. Brad Benavides, another good weekend for him, extending his championship lead.
And it also means that Brad Benavides could yet decide the fate of the title as soon as Barcelona now. So next round could yet have it all sewn up for him. So we'll wait with bated breath for that. Of course, we won't have long to wait. But Michael Shin collecting his trophy, and also Motor Park collecting the winning team's trophy as well alike. But yes, Benavides on the cusp of joining the Roll of Honour of champions here in the Euroformula Open.
Lots of bonus points we have to take into account for that as well. It's not just the 25 points available for each win. There's pole position, there's fastest lap, there's overtaking points as well. So it'll be a rough one to calculate in Barcelona, if indeed that is the case for Brad Benavides. As the champagne is sprayed, they're trying to get the Motorpark representative to join in on the spoils. Brad Benavides saying, "You will take this." And they do get it done. But we will see you in 2 weeks' time in Barcelona for the penultimate round of the championship.